You walk out of a restaurant. The food was decent. The service was unremarkable. You leave a 20% tip without thinking. Now imagine the same restaurant offers you a 20% rebate at the door for being a nice customer. You would find it insulting. A coworker helps you move on a Saturday. You buy them dinner and beer. Everyone leaves smiling. Now imagine you offered them $200 cash for the same help. The friendship would suffer. These are not unrelated quirks. They are clues to one of the deepest, strangest patterns in human psychology, and the economist who decoded them, Dan Ariely at Duke University, calls it the collision between social norms and market norms. Once you understand this collision, you will see it everywhere, and you will never look at your own tipping behavior the same way again. In our last video, we explored the FOMO economy and how social media bankrupts your brain. Today, we examine a phenomenon almost no one questions because it is too embedded in daily life. Why do we tip? Why does it feel so different from any other transaction? And why is this small ritual one of the most revealing windows into how the human mind actually works? Let us start with Ariely's foundational insight, published in his book, Predictably Irrational. The human brain operates in two largely separate normative worlds. The first is the world of market norms, where everything has a price, exchanges are explicit, and rational calculation rules. You pay $20, you get a haircut. The transaction is balanced, both parties walk away. The second is the world of social norms, where things are given freely, gifts are reciprocated over time, and explicit pricing is taboo. You help your sister move. She thanks you. Years later, she helps you when you need it. The transaction is real, but it operates on a completely different logic. Here is the crucial finding. These two worlds use entirely different brain regions and decision-making processes. fMRI studies have shown that economic transactions activate the prefrontal cortex and reward circuitry associated with calculation, while social exchanges activate brain regions associated with bonding, trust, and attachment. They are not on a spectrum. They are different operating systems. Ariely demonstrated this with a now famous experiment. He recruited two groups of subjects to perform the same simple task, dragging circles on a computer screen for a small period. One group was paid a market wage, around $5. The second group was paid much less, around 50 cents. The third group was asked to do it as a favor, no payment, just please help. As you would expect, the higher paid group worked harder than the lower paid group, market norms operating cleanly. But the third group, the unpaid one, worked the hardest of all. They were operating under social norms, and social norms produced more effort than money did. The act of asking for help rather than offering payment recruited a different psychological system entirely. Now here is the dangerous part. Ariely ran a follow-up. He gave the favor group a small gift instead of payment, candy worth roughly 50 cents. They worked just as hard as the original favor group. Social norms remained intact. But when he labeled the gift with its market price, this is a piece of candy worth 50 cents, effort collapsed back to the lowest level. The price tag converted the gift into a transaction. The social norm was destroyed by the introduction of explicit market language, and once destroyed, it could not be restored. This is what Ariely calls the asymmetry of norms. You can move from social norms to market norms in an instant, but the reverse is enormously difficult. Once you put a price on a gift, on a friendship, on a relationship, you cannot easily put the gift back. The brain switches operating systems and refuses to switch back. This brings us to tipping. Tipping is the rare, possibly unique social ritual that lives in the impossible space between social and market norms. You are paying for a service. That is market. You are also expressing gratitude, social standing, and care for the worker. That is social. Tipping survives because it lets us pretend, briefly, that the transaction is partly a gift, that we and the server are in a relationship, that money is being exchanged, but also that something more humane is happening. Cornell University's Dr. Michael Lin has spent his career studying tipping behavior, and his findings are unsettling. The single biggest predictor of tip size, controlling for service quality, is not service. It is the customer's mood, gender of the server, weather, and dozens of other irrelevant factors. Service quality explains only about 4% of variation in tip size. Yet customers consistently report that they tip based on service. The brain tells itself a story about why it is tipping that has very little to do with the actual decision being made. Now let us address what is happening to tipping in the modern era. Tipping inflation. Once limited to restaurants and a few service contexts, tip prompts now appear at coffee shops, self-checkout kiosks, online orders, and even, in some cases, automated machines. A 2023 bank rate survey found that 30% of Americans report being asked to tip in contexts they consider inappropriate, and 66% now hold a negative view of tipping culture overall. Why is this happening? Because businesses have discovered an exploit. Adding a tip prompt converts a market transaction into a social one in the customer's brain, even when the underlying exchange is purely commercial. The customer feels the social pressure of refusing to tip a person even when no person was meaningfully involved. The brain cannot easily distinguish between a real social context and a simulated one displayed on a touchscreen. Tipping inflation is not a moral failure. It is a psychological exploit at industrial scale. What does your tipping behavior actually reveal about you? More than you think. Lin's research has shown that tipping is, at its core, an identity expression. People tip generously when they want to feel generous, want to be seen as generous, or want to maintain a self-image as the kind of person who is generous. People tip poorly when they want to assert status hierarchy, express displeasure, or signal that they are above the social context. This explains a strange finding. Wealthy people tip slightly less, on average, than middle-class people, both as a percentage and in absolute terms relative to wealth. Why? Because tipping signals identity, and the wealthy have other, more potent ways to signal status. They do not need to use tipping as a status mechanism. The middle class often does, both upward to feel generous and downward to feel adequately middle class. Yale psychologist Margaret Clark distinguished between communal relationships and exchange relationships. Communal relationships with family, friends, romantic partners are governed by mutual care and indirect reciprocity. Exchange relationships with employers, customers, contractors are governed by explicit balanced transactions. Tipping forces these two relationship types to coexist in a single moment. You are paying for service, exchange, while also caring about the person serving you, communal. The brain tries to honor both. The tip is the negotiated settlement. So how should you actually think about tipping in 2026? First, distinguish the situation. When tipping a real person whose income depends substantially on tips, restaurant servers, hairdressers, baristas in tip-dependent jobs, this is genuinely a social economic hybrid. Tip thoughtfully and consistently, treating it as part of the actual cost of the service. Second, resist tipping inflation in artificial contexts. Self-checkout kiosks, automated systems, and contexts where no person is providing meaningful additional service have weaponized tipping psychology to extract additional revenue. You are not being mean by declining. You are being honest about what is actually a market transaction. Third, notice your own motives. The next time you tip, ask yourself, am I tipping because of the service or because I want to feel like the kind of person who tips well? Both are valid reasons, but the decision becomes clearer when you know which one is operating. Lin's research suggests most tipping is identity expression, not service evaluation. That is not a flaw. It is just useful information. Fourth, Respect the asymmetry of norms. If you have a friend who provides a service professionally, a hairdresser, an attorney, a coach, decide deliberately which norm you want to operate under. If you want a friendship, ask for the favor and reciprocate socially. If you want professional service, pay the market rate and stop expecting friend treatment. Trying to have both, especially through awkward partial payment, often destroys both. Here is the truth about tipping. It is the small daily ritual where you decide, without thinking, whether the person across the counter from you is fully a stranger or partially a fellow human in your social circle. Most of the time, your brain handles this automatically. The 20% default emerges from somewhere deeper than your conscious choice. But understanding the system gives you back something. Tipping inflation has been quietly stealing the freedom to choose whether a transaction is purely market, partly social, or fully a gift, and to do so deliberately. If this changed how you think about tipping and social norms, subscribe and turn on notifications. Every Tuesday and Friday, we break down the psychology behind your financial life. Next up, the psychology of debt. Why your brain treats debt like free money, the strange phenomenon called debt normalization, and the mortgage illusion that has trapped entire generations into believing they own things they actually rent from the bank. Link is on screen now.